7:11 a.m. On a cold, foggy California morning, that was the exact timestamp of the very last message 15-year-old Sierra LaMar would ever send. Minutes later, she grabbed her purse, walked out the front door of her Morgan Hill home, and began the short walk down the rural road towards her high school bus stop. She was supposed to board the bus at 7:30 a.m., but the bus came and went, and Sierra never got on. Sierra was a bubbly, popular sophomore who had recently moved to the area. She was deeply missed by her old friends, loved by her family, and completely reliable. So when the afternoon sun began to set and Sierra hadn't returned home, her mother, Marlene, assumed she was just staying late for an after-school activity. But as the hours ticked into night, a suffocating panic began to set in. Marlene called the school, only to receive a piece of news that made her heart drop into her stomach. Sierra hadn't just skipped her afternoon classes. She had been marked absent for the entire day. She had vanished somewhere in the critical 20-minute window between leaving her house and reaching that bus stop. By the next morning, the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Department launched a massive, full-scale missing persons investigation. Search and rescue teams, tracking dogs, and hundreds of frantic local volunteers flooded the rural landscape, combing through miles of thick brush, reservoirs, and open fields. They were desperate to find a trail, any sign of where the teenager could have gone. And just 2 days into the frantic search, they found exactly what they were looking for. Dropped casually in a field, miles away from her walking route, investigators discovered Sierra's cell phone. But it was what they found hidden in the brush just 1 day later that turned a missing person case into a terrifying, active kidnapping investigation. Sierra hadn't run away. Someone had violently intercepted her on that foggy road, and they had left behind a trail of discarded clues that would lead police straight to a predator. When a teenager vanishes, the first 48 hours are everything. For the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Department, the clock was ticking at a terrifying speed. Sierra's smartphone, found discarded in a muddy ditch, was immediately rushed to the crime lab. But upon inspection, the device was already completely clean. No frantic texts, no SOS calls, and no digital fingerprints left behind by an attacker. But the real breakthrough came just 24 hours later, near an old, weathered shed off Scheller Avenue, less than 2 miles from Sierra's home. Hidden precariously behind the shed, searchers spotted a bright pink and black Juicy Couture brand purse. It belonged to Sierra. But it was the contents inside that sent shivers down the spines of the entire search team. Inside the purse, investigators found Sierra's jeans, her shoes, and her favourite San Jose Sharks hoodie. The clothes were heavily caked in mud, but they weren't ripped or shredded. They had been folded. To the FBI profiling team, this was a profoundly ominous sign. Sierra hadn't dropped her bag while running for her life. Someone had violently stripped her of her clothing, packed her items neatly back into her purse, and tossed her belongings into the weeds to eliminate any immediate trace of her. As the news of the discarded clothing broke, the quiet town of Morgan Hill transformed. What followed was one of the largest volunteer search efforts in North California history. Every single weekend, hundreds of total strangers, high school students, and professional search and rescue teams lined up at dawn. They combed through every dense ravine, dove into local reservoirs, and searched abandoned buildings across a 3-mile radius. Her classmates held massive candlelit vigils, desperately hoping for a miracle. But as the days bled into weeks, the fields grew empty and the trail went cold. There was absolutely no trace of Sierra LaMar. But while the land yielded no answers, investigators were quietly pivoting to the roadways. They began scraping every frame of traffic surveillance footage from the morning of March 16th, and they were about to spot a nondescript red car that had no business idling on that quiet country road. With no physical trail left in the fields, detectives turned their eyes to the sky. They pulled every single frame of surveillance tape from neighbourhood security feeds, traffic intersections, and local buses that operated near Sierra's walking route on the morning she vanished. And when they synchronized the timelines, a highly suspicious vehicle popped up on a camera near a local mobile home park. It was a faded red 1998 Volkswagen Jetta. The Jetta didn't belong to anyone in the immediate neighbourhood. More importantly, it was caught on camera cruising right past Sierra's walking path within a critical 5-minute window of her disappearance. Detectives ran the plates, and the car was registered to a 21-year-old local resident living a few towns over. His name was Antolin Garcia-Torres. To Sierra's family, the name meant absolutely nothing. Garcia-Torres was a complete stranger. He didn't go to Sierra's school, he didn't run in her social circles, and he had no logical reason to be anywhere near her rural road at 7 in the morning. But as investigators dug into his background, a terrifying profile began to take shape. Garcia-Torres worked night shifts at a local grocery store, meaning he was frequently awake and driving alone in the isolated early morning hours. Even more chillingly, detectives discovered that Garcia-Torres had been linked to a series of unsettling incidents in the area. Months prior, several local women had reported being stalked or approached by a man fitting his description in a nearby supermarket parking lot. One woman reported that a stranger had actually followed her home and tried to grab her from behind. It became terrifyingly clear to the FBI that Sierra hadn't been targeted for who she was. She had been targeted because she was alone. Garcia-Torres was a predator hunting for an opportunity, and on that foggy March morning, Sierra was simply walking down a road with no one else around. In May 2012, just 2 months after the disappearance, police swarmed Garcia-Torres and seized his red Jetta for a deep forensic lockdown. They didn't have a body, a weapon, or a confession, but hidden inside that car was a microscopic trap that he could never escape. When a homicide goes to trial without a body, a weapon, or a crime scene, the burden of proof is immense. To catch a killer, investigators had to shrink their focus down to a microscopic scale. Forensic technicians took Antolin Garcia-Torres' red Volkswagen Jetta apart, piece by piece. They vacuumed the carpets, scraped the seats, and sprayed chemical agents across every inch of the interior. And inside the trunk, wrapped around a thick nylon rope, they found it. A single, long strand of dark human hair. The lab rushed the hair for DNA testing, and the results were undeniable. It belonged to Sierra LaMar. There was absolutely no innocent explanation for a 15-year-old girl's hair to be trapped on a utility rope inside the trunk of a total stranger's car. But the forensic team wasn't done. They turned their attention back to the pink purse found abandoned in the muddy fields weeks earlier. Using advanced DNA extraction techniques on Sierra's discarded, folded clothing, technicians discovered touch DNA on the outside of her sweatshirt and jeans. The genetic profile came back as a perfect match to Antolin Garcia-Torres. The cross-transfer of evidence was complete, creating a perfect forensic loop. Garcia-Torres' DNA was on Sierra's clothing in the field, and Sierra's hair was locked inside his car trunk. Furthermore, when forensic specialists analysed the fibres of the trunk rope, they found matching microscopic synthetic fibres transferred onto Sierra's clothing. Garcia-Torres had tried to cover his tracks by wiping down the car and discarding her bag, but he couldn't see the microscopic evidence he left behind. He had literally wrapped his own guilt into the fibres of his vehicle. The science had painted a terrifying picture. Sierra had been forced into the trunk of that red Jetta on the side of the road, driven to an unknown location, and stripped of her belongings. Armed with this bulletproof mountain of microscopic evidence, prosecutors bypassed the missing person files completely. They officially charged Antolin Garcia-Torres with first-degree murder and prepared to walk into a courtroom for one of the most high-stakes, no-body trials in California history. In early 2017, 5 years after Sierra vanished, the trial of Antolin Garcia-Torres finally began in a San Jose courtroom. It was one of the most legally challenging prosecutions imaginable. A capital murder case with no body, no crime scene, no weapon, and no confession. The defense fought back aggressively. They argued that because Sierra's remains had never been found, there was no definitive proof that she was even dead. They suggested she might have simply run away to start a new life. But prosecutors completely dismantled the runaway theory. They pointed to Sierra's impeccable school records, her close bonds with her family, and the fact that she hadn't touched her social media or bank accounts since 7:11 a.m. on March 16, 2012. Then, they hammered home the microscopic trail. Why would a runaway leave her favourite clothing neatly folded in a muddy field? How did her hair end up caught on a rope inside a complete stranger's trunk? The prosecution argued that the trunk of that red Jetta was the crime scene, and that Garcia-Torres had permanently hidden the evidence of his crimes. For 13 agonizing weeks, Sierra's family sat through grueling testimony, forced to visualize the terrifying final moments of their 15-year-old daughter. In May 2017, the case went to the jury. After days of tense deliberation, the courtroom fell completely silent as the verdict form was handed to the clerk. Guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom erupted in quiet tears of relief from Sierra's loved ones. While the jury spared Garcia-Torres from the death penalty, the judge handed down the maximum possible alternative: life in prison without the possibility of parole. It felt like the final chapter. The predator was locked away forever, and justice had been served, even if Sierra's family still didn't have the answers they desperately needed to lay her to rest. But in the world of true crime, finality can be an illusion. Nearly a decade after that guilty verdict, a massive legal bombshell would shatter the peace of this closed case and threaten to set Sierra's killer completely free. For nearly a decade, the case of Sierra LaMar was considered closed. Antolin Garcia-Torres was locked away deep inside a California state prison, serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. But behind prison walls, a team of lawyers was quietly picking the prosecution's historic 2017 victory apart, brick by brick. And in early 2026, a legal bombshell dropped that sent an absolute shockwave straight through Northern California. California's 6th Appellate District Court officially issued a stunning ruling. They were completely reversing and overturning Antolin Garcia-Torres' first-degree murder conviction. The 3-judge panel ruled that because Sierra's body and a murder weapon were never recovered, the original trial lacked evidence of willful, deliberate, and premeditated murder or a specific intent to kill. But the Appellate Court's ruling went even deeper, pointing out a massive procedural failure in the original trial. Back in 2017, prosecutors hadn't just tried Garcia-Torres for Sierra's murder. To prove he was a danger to women, they tacked on 3 entirely separate cases, unrelated charges from his past, accusing him of attempting to kidnap women in Safeway supermarket parking lots when he was just 17 years old. The appeals court ruled that joining those completely unrelated cases together was deeply improper, unfairly forcing the jury to view him as a predator before they even looked at the forensic evidence of Sierra's case. The legal ruling completely erased his life sentence, instantly opening the door for Garcia-Torres to be completely retried for the crime. The Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office immediately released a statement expressing deep disappointment in the court's decision, vowing that their detectives would support prosecutors in any further proceedings. But the damage was already done. The ruling meant that after 14 long years of heartbreak, Sierra's family was suddenly thrust right back to square one. The closure they had fought so hard to secure was instantly stripped away, setting up a terrifying, high-stakes legal standoff that could determine whether a suspected killer walked free. Antolin Garcia-Torres has officially been transferred out of his maximum security prison cell and hauled back into a Santa Clara County jail. Because of the appeals court ruling, prosecutors are locked into a grueling, high-stakes countdown. A new trial has officially been set, but the rules of the game have completely changed. The district attorney is now legally barred from using his past kidnapping attempts to sway a jury, and they can no longer argue the murder was premeditated. In this upcoming retrial, prosecutors must build an entirely new strategy on a foundation of pure forensics alone. It is a simply terrifying gamble. If a new jury hesitates over the lack of a body or a crime scene, a suspected predator could walk completely free. Yet, as the legal battle lines are drawn in the courtroom, the true tragedy remains exactly where it began 14 years ago. The Santa Clara County Sheriff's Department has made a solemn vow. They will never stop tracking leads, and they will never stop digging. To them, and to the hundreds of search volunteers who spend years combing the California hills, this case isn't just about a legal conviction. It is about bringing a 15-year-old girl home to her family so she can finally be laid to rest. The forensic evidence proves he was there, but the law has just wiped his slate clean. What do you think is going to happen in this new trial? Will the DNA evidence be enough to convict him a second time, or will the lack of a body set him free? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay updated on this active retrial and see more deep dives into true crime justice, hit that subscribe button. And thank you for watching.